welcome back to Zeroing In on Health. My name is Charles Washington. This week we're going to take up where we left off last week in our discussion of calories. You'll recall from last week's discussion that we talked about the law of energy conservation. That is, a change in energy stores equals energy intake minus energy expenditure. The experts tell us that obesity is caused by excess calories consumed over a period of time, and this leads to gradual weight gain. The way we prevent this is by either eating less or increasing our physical activity. This assumption is based upon how the three variables in the energy balance equation, energy storage, energy intake, and energy expenditure, relate to each other. They assume that energy intake and energy expenditure are what mathematicians call independent variables, meaning that we can change one without affecting the other. So the question is it possible to change energy intake in a living organism without prompting compensatory changes in energy expenditure? Seeing as how food labels are just a recent thing, the surprising thing should be if you see a person with a stable body weight. If it all depends on our ability to judge the calories in the foods we eat, then there should be no stranger phenomenon than a person who's lean with a stable body weight. Now this may surprise some of you, but the same law of energy conservation that tells us calories in equals calories out also says that any increase in energy expenditure will have to induce a compensatory increase in intake. Hunger has to be a consequence, and any enforced decrease in intake will have to induce a compensatory decrease in expenditure, a slowing of the metabolism and/or a reduction in physical activity. Now see, I know what you're thinking as you're sitting there watching this video. You say to yourself, well, I exercise, I go to the gym, but it doesn't make me hungry. And you know, that's an interesting point that you make. But the fact is, if you watch the trend every single year, it starts in January. In January, everybody makes a New Year's resolution because they want to be thin. They want to look like me. And what they do is they join gyms, they pay all this money, and then what happens is, after a couple of months, all of a sudden their gym memberships are just gone to the wind. What happens? Why is it that this occurs every single year? And the reason is because when you increase energy expenditure, but you don't increase the calories as a result, you can do this for a while and you can suffer. You can go without a little food, you can eat less, and you can feel good, and you can keep working out. But after a couple of months of that, your body shuts down. All of a sudden, there's no motivation, there's no energy, there's no more gains, you're not making the muscle you used to make, and you're constantly hungry. And then you break your diet. Next thing you know, you're head first in you're head over heels in a plate of Ben & Jerry's. And that's what happens when you don't keep up with your energy levels. You have to eat if you're going to increase your energy expenditure. Now this tells us something very profound about exercise. To quote from Gary Taub's research again, it says, food in excess of immediate requirements and not needed to replenish stores can be readily disposed of, being burned up and dissipated as heat. This was written by David Lyon and Sir Derek Dunlop, clinicians at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh in 1932. They went on to say, did this capacity not exist, obesity would be almost universal. And so the ability to burn up small excesses on the order of a few hundred calories a day is well within the capacity of the ordinary person. But in the obese individuals, the power of flexibility is much less. So according to Voigt, overeating leads to an increase in the available energy for cells, tissues, and muscles, and so perhaps to what the clinical investigators studying obesity in the first half of the century called the impulse to physical activity, or the impulse to move. That feeling of restlessness, they believe, is the manifestation of cells and tissues literally having energy to burn. So lean people tend to be more active than obese people because a greater proportion of the energy they consume is made available to their cells and tissues for energy. By this conception, lean people become marathon runners because they have more energy to burn for physical activity. Their cells have access to a greater proportion of the calories they eat to use for energy. Less goes to making fat. That's why they're lean. Running marathons, however, will not make fat people lean, even if they can get themselves to do it, because their bodies will adjust to the extra expenditure of energy just as they would adjust to calorie-restricted diets. So a fundamental requirement of any living organism is to provide a steady and reliable supply of fuel to its cells regardless of the circumstances. We apparently evolved an intricate and extraordinary robust regulatory system of hormones, enzymes, and the nervous system to accomplish this task. If the necessary fuel fails to reach the cells, the body compensates. The crucial factor is not how much is eaten, how many calories are consumed, or how much is expended, but how those nutrients or the energy they contain is ultimately distributed, how those calories are utilized and made available when needed. It's not the energy balance that's driving the system, but the distribution of that energy, the demand for energy at the cellular level. This is why I recommend no activity or no exercise for individuals on a zero-carb diet. Obesity is internal starvation. That means that you spend a significant period of time without your cells and tissues getting the nutrients and the fatty acids that they need. When you start to eat properly, you eat a carbohydrate-free diet, your insulin levels fall, and now your cells and tissues are beginning to get the energy that they normally should have gotten. So therefore your appetite increases. People on zero carb, when they start off, generally eat loads of fat, they eat loads of food because now their bodies are finally getting the nutrition that they needed. According to this law of energy conservation, what should happen is your body should prompt you to increase your activity. But once you increase that activity, that doesn't have to be formal exercise. Increasing activity means taking a longer walk, taking the stairs when the elevator isn't available, taking up household chores, painting your house, things that you ordinarily wouldn't have done. You'll find yourself off the couch with plenty of energy. You might not feel like you have energy, but once you set out to do something, you'll find that you could keep going all day. You have this deep reservoir of energy. That's the natural way to do things. It doesn't have to, exercise doesn't always have to begin and end in some gym. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I appreciate you joining me for another exploration of calories. Tune in next Wednesday for our next video blog, which topic will be determined. But once again, I'm Charles Washington with Zeroing In on Health.